Hey everyone, welcome back to the Waste World Podcast, the podcast where we dig into the innovations, challenges, and people shaping the future of waste and recycling. I'm your host, Gage Edwards with Waste360.com. Today we are back. I am back from a long trip. I was gone for a couple weeks. As you know, I moved and then I didn't have internet, and then I left town for 2 weeks. I was on vacation and I was doing another show. I was at a different conference. So I have been on the road. I have just moved into my new house and I haven't even been able to enjoy it fully. And as you'll see, there's no video component to this side of the podcast because my microphone broke. And since my microphone broke, I have to use a different source that is blocking my camera on my PC. So things are getting a little twisted. You know how after you move, things just break. Stuff is just broken. Well, that's what's happening to me right now. So now that I'm back from vacation, I need to figure out what's going on with my microphone, where the right cords are. Is the cord the issue? Is the microphone the issue? God, I hope it's the cord. And once I figure that out, order something and get some pieces back together so my life can continue as normal. Saying that, there is a video portion of this podcast in the middle. The bulk of it, the interview you'll hear today, is in video form because things were working before I left and now things are not. So that's fun. So today we're going to be diving into one of the most talked about topics in the industry right now. That is technology and AI. I cannot go to a conference or have a conversation without AI and new technology innovations popping up. And haulers are under growing pressure to modernize as cities and regulators demand digital tracking, transparency, and compliance. At the same time, AI is rapidly moving into routing and billing and even customer service. You're talking to a robot a lot of times. But there's still a lot of confusion around what's hype and what's actually practical for haulers today. So that brings me to my guest this week, Michael Marmo, CEO of CurbWaste, the first end-to-end operating system built for independent waste haulers. Today we're talking about how AI is really being used in the industry, where it's delivering results, and how small and mid-sized haulers can stay competitive as technology continues to evolve. Hope you learned something. My guest today is Michael Marmo, the founder and CEO of CurbWaste, a technology company focusing and helping independent haulers streamline their operations through one unified platform. Under his leadership, CurbWaste has become a trusted tech partner to more than 150 haulers across the country, from family-run operations to regional players, helping them save time, improve margins, and stay ahead of the new digital and compliance requirements in the industry. Michael, thank you so much for joining me on this lovely Monday morning. It's a little chilly outside for me. Hope you're having fair weather over there, but how are you?
I'm doing well. Excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Of course. We're always excited to have, the real game changers in the industry join us on the show, and kind of that's what we're going to get into today. But before we kind of get into what's going on with CurbWaste, I want to talk about you a little bit.
Yeah.
For listeners who may not know who you are, can you give us a quick overview of CurbWaste and maybe what you do, the end-to-end operating system for haulers you have going on? What's the picture of CurbWaste?
Yeah, it's a pretty broad picture. We really try to be the operating system for the hauler itself. So everything from like customer acquisition to order management, dispatching, driver apps for the mobile components, billing, payments, reporting. It kind of covers the entire business to end as from an operational and billable perspective.
Mhm.
And yeah, my background, I came from the industry itself. I've owned a waste company. My family's been in the waste business for 4 generations. Technically, I guess I'm
Oh, wow.
the generation. So I grew up in this space. And the goal was not to be a tech founder, quite honestly. I was running a waste company in New York, ran a roll-off company for 7 years. Went through COVID, and we had built the system originally for ourselves, and then eventually, sold the waste company, and then spun this CurbWaste product out. And I think overall, it's just allowed us an opportunity to see the waste industry on a national level, really see different how all waste is local and how everybody does things a little bit differently, and try to build a platform that's dynamic but also rigid. So it's been a fun problem to solve.
Yeah, I guess 4 generations in the industry, what other generations seeing you do this are they just like, wow, we never thought of this. This is insane that you're doing.
It's been pretty funny. I mean, like I said, like it wasn't really the intention per se.
Mhm.
I always had a dream and vision of like, competing and being in the space and doing something meaningful. I think, the goal is always to kind of do better than the previous generation, right? And move things forward. And I think, when I was working in a transfer station, which is what my family had done here in New York. Um, Learning about the business, seeing what the problems are, really understanding and talking to a lot of different waste haulers, that were dumping at the facility or contractors or, anybody that was coming in, um, seeing what the problems were and then kind of dreaming about like, how can we improve this? How can we make this better? I mean, I was young and, tech was obviously a big part of my upbringing. So when you start a waste company in New York, especially, you kind of have to figure out how you're going to compete. Um, and tech was the logical conclusion that I made. And so, I wish I could say I had this like amazing grand vision and like, but the reality was like it was more of a necessity and trying to solve for like these pain points and being able to be
Mhm.
competitive. But I think by doing, you figure out like, wow, this is actually a bigger problem than I thought. And it kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, and especially talking with a bunch of people who have similar businesses in New York. New
Yeah.
York presents its own problems when it's with solving waste, when it's the shifts that these haulers are working with just to take care of all the trash that goes through New York. I can't imagine the
It's
process there.
It's a lot, man. It's a lot, and there's a lot going on here. But you also like, I mean, nationally, you see it in a lot of the bigger markets, right? Like obviously, infrastructure plays a role in how the city is set up and all these other things. But there's just a lot of pain in this industry across the board. I'm sure you know that. I know that. Everybody probably listening knows that. So it's just about trying to solve those pain points and make this industry a little bit easier, and help them service the communities. Really, like that's just the main objective. So.
Yeah, if I ever wanted to rebrand this podcast, I could probably call it Pain Points, and then each of my guests really honestly have been like, "Here's the pain point. Here's how I'm figuring it out." Like, okay, cool. I'm basically offering a solutions conversation to the industry.
Which is cool,
Uh,
man. And building a community is important. Like I think one of the things that's been really interesting is like, everybody has like the same problems, but like kind of different. And so they're nuanced, right? And when you get something like this where you can have a conversation and a dialogue, it kind of breeds ideas and innovation through like hearing about somebody else's pain or hearing about another problem. Because it creates like this commonality, but it also allows you to think about a situation differently, which I think is a really interesting thing in this space that it doesn't do a great job of, but could do a better job of.
Now, those pain points, I guess that kind of gets me into one of my topics here is, there are growing pressures to modernize for haulers. What's pushing us towards that digital transformation right now?
I think there's a couple driving factors there. First off, I think that the stakeholders are changing, right? Like I think you're seeing a kind of turnover of people coming into positions across the entire ecosystem, whether it's in the companies themselves or it's like, the contractors, my customer base, my residents, the municipality. You're seeing a change of stakeholders where I think previously digitization and modernization was considered like a nice to have. They're expecting you to have that type of kind of digital interaction or data driven approach, right? So I think with that happening, it's moving at a pretty rapid pace. And then secondarily to that, like technology, right now we're in like an kind of an AI boom, and it's probably one of the largest kind of upheavals and disruptions of the tech industry in quite some time. And that's moving at a unbelievably fast pace. We're all feeling it in some way, shape, or form. So, running a tech company during this is pretty wild. But I think because of those two drivers, these industries are all across the board are having to innovate and having to kind of figure out the ways that they're going to keep pace. And with waste companies, when you're servicing a market, right, like you're always looking for edges, right? You're always looking for something. Either you're competing with one of the top 10 or you're trying to compete in these very dense markets. And so the digitization need is just accelerating and it's going to continue to accelerate.
Yeah, and it's almost like I sent you the questions beforehand, but so getting into AI, that's my next topic. um, so I mean, I talk to a lot of people who are haulers, from the top, from the CEO all the way down to the truck drivers, and there's a lot of misconceptions around AI and how that's working in the waste recycling operation. What are you seeing out there in these misconceptions or these conversations you're having around AI and implementing these into these companies that may be hesitant to get into AI, maybe not understand the need for this digitization to modernize? What's out there?
I think from a misconception side, I think AI is actually fairly challenging right now because you see a lot of it and you hear a lot about it, but it's very high level. It's you kind of see it from 35,000 feet. So it's difficult for a lot of people to understand. Um, and also like where the data is coming from, how is it working? I think the biggest misconception in our space specifically is people displacement. I think people feel as though it's going to automate every job function, right? And before you know it, we're not going to have anybody running a waste company at all. I don't see that to be true, at least now. Who knows where the technology goes, but there's always going to be an element of like the human effort. I think what AI is going to do is it's going to definitely automate functions like repetitive functions or recurring functions or give you better insights to make better decisions. But I still think there's going to be elements of, human need because there's a lot of like the waste industry is super nuanced, right? And again, there's a lot of tribal knowledge. There's a lot of these ideas of like, how does this market operate compared to this market? It's not like a playbook where you can kind of just like rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. It has elements of nuance that is difficult to understand. And you're still going to need people that can kind of teach, train, and help the AI understand like what's going on in that particular market. So like I'll use an example, like we've seen material sorting as an AI tool for quite some time, like material recognition. And you've seen it in MRFs, you've seen it just utilized in many different areas, but it still hasn't fully automated that function. It helps. It makes it make an easier decision. Maybe it can help you improve your recycling percentage or help you find, efficiencies, but ultimately it doesn't completely displace it. And so I think that's probably the biggest misconception I've seen. But I also think that there's a lot of education that has to happen within this space as it relates to AI.
Yeah, I think when again these conversations that I have around this topic, it's education that comes first, and then there is the fear of displacement. But the conversation has always ended with it's not displacement. We're working with AI. We're learning how to work with it. We're all in this together still. AI is a tool we'll use to make our jobs easier, to make our jobs safer. And even for me, like I'm a content producer, so AI comes in and they can write a whole article in 6 seconds. I'm like, wow, I can't do that, but maybe I could use the tools there to make maybe my writing a little better or something. There's still a human element that we need on this end too. So I think that's a good thing we need to scream from the rooftops. We're not losing the workforce. The workforce is just using AI to be a better workforce.
Exactly. And I think it's gonna like in the waste industry specifically, like, it's a utility, right? Like it's a core utility but utilities typically are able to be measured. And I think where the waste industry struggles is like, okay, how do we measure this in a way that like makes sense? Like how do we actually take this data that we're aggregating on a daily, basis and utilize it appropriately? And I think that's where AI can play a role. Like it can do a lot as it relates to kind of taking data and then processing it and presenting it in the way in which you need it presented. But again, like it needs to understand what the drivers are. It needs to understand like why is this important? And I think that's where the human element comes in. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like it's a collaborative effort. It's really just about, utilizing the tool effectively to make the best decision. And that's really what it is.
Now, if we're talking challenges and all these haulers you're working with, 150 haulers, what are some common challenges they face when trying to modernize?
Oh, dude, so many. It's hard. It's hard, man.
Where do we start? How much time do we have?
It's a lot. I don't know. I don't know. We could sit here for a while. Um, it's difficult. Like I think when it comes from maybe I can speak from the perspective of like a tech provider. It comes from like putting my tech hat on. I think the biggest challenge is change management. Like tried and true. I think if you talk to any of our companies or any hauler that's ever implemented an ERP or something, they're going to tell you like the change management was difficult, painful, whatever. And it is like it's no matter how much effort we put a ton of effort into it, but like no matter how much effort you put in, it's hard to take something you've done for, a decade or 2 decades, or, this is the way that my grandfather did it. And listen, I live that, right? Like I understand that. And when it's working, right? It's hard to argue with like, this is not working. Um, and so like change is really difficult. And you have to, there's so many parts of it. Like you have the data piece, you obviously have the training piece, you have like, okay, I'm used to doing it this way, this system does it this way, or it reads out this way, or the vernacular is different. That becomes really difficult. So I'd say like that's probably the number one. If we polled everybody listening to this, I would say that they'd probably say that. But I also think it's like seeing things from another perspective, like a workflow from a different perspective. That kind of plays into change management a bit, but it's also a mindset. It's like, how do I make it as such that I've been used to doing things this way. The market has told me that this is the way I want to do it. But like if I added an AI automation that showed you like with tried and true data and KPIs, this is a better way of doing it, or we have another company in a similar market that's doing it this way and winning, it's difficult to change your mindset and say like, oh, maybe I should look at it this way. But I do think that goes back to kind of what you said earlier, like the competitive elements of like, how do you compete and how do you modernize? You have to kind of have a more ascending, forward-thinking mindset. Like, oh, there's going to be a better way, or there is a better way. So I would probably say those two things, honestly. Like, I think those are the biggest things in terms of modernization.
Yeah, I think if I had to think about my great grandfather, what his life would be like if he had an iPhone. Like, I mean, it's just that simple. Like, if we have the technology now, I mean, we can implement it, and your life will be a little easier based on that.
Yeah. And sometimes, they have this view that like it's going to be make this massive sweeping change.
Mhm.
Uh, that's also not necessarily the case, right? Like modernization means different things for different people. If you're pen to paper, like anything, like even Excel sheet is a modernization, right? So like there's levels in which, modernizing becomes relevant. And I think again, like it's kind of our job and I think tech companies' jobs in general to work them through the stages of that change, understand the psychology of it, and also understand why it's been this way for so long, and then make sure that you're kind of touching those points and showing them along the way, like this is going to help with this is going to help with this. And it doesn't have to be all at once. You don't have to rip the Band-Aid off. You can piecemeal it as you decide to do it.
Yeah, so if they're getting started, if these smaller haulers are trying to compete with larger companies, where do you think they should start to modernize? What is the thing that can get them going?
Yeah. I would say like I would probably like if I'm putting my waste hauler hat on now, where I would start is let's identify where we're struggling. Let's actually get into the weeds on like what is the pain. Because a lot of
Mhm.
time what happens is like you think you understand what the pain is, but you don't really know it. Like we go with that all the time in like tech, right? Like you're constantly dealing with this like, okay, are we solving the right problem or are we solving an assumptive problem that we feel, but it's not necessarily the problem itself? So I think identifying the pain point, and then the second thing to that is then deciding like who do you want to become? What do you want to be? What's the vision, right? So like I think that's a really difficult question to answer for a lot of waste companies because they're thinking about building a business. They're thinking about like, okay, revenue. They're thinking about costs. They're thinking about, oh, I need a new truck, right? It's very tactical. But I think a lot of times you just have to understand, like, is your outcome, I want to sell to waste management, right? Like, or is your outcome, I want to build a legacy company that can pass down to my kids? Or do I want to build the next waste management, right? Like, do I want to be the next one? So those are very different visions. And depending on what vision you want, plus what pain you're trying to solve for, you're usually going to come to like an understanding of like, these are the key decisions I need to make. And here's the systems and here's the processes that I need to implement because they're very different. And I think if you can do those two things, align on those two things with your team or your partnership or wherever it is, your investors, or if you're the sole owner, like this is what I want to be. Then you can go out and find the right partner that aligns with those goals. And then again, cost becomes one thing or another thing, and change management becomes more critical or less critical. So it really just depends on what those two things are, and then you can make better decisions moving forward.
Yeah, and I guess moving into, I'm gonna have to move a lot of hats around: hauler hat, data hat,
That's
tech
fine.
hat. Here we go. What is the key to actually using data effectively rather than just storing it?
Oh man, this is I think, the most important thing. If I can get anything across in this podcast at all, this would be the most important thing. I think the waste industry holistically has done this poorly. And I think I did it poorly. I think looking back, I could have been more proactive in making better decisions. But because I was so dialed into servicing, like really, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a negative. I'm just saying that I think I should have taken more time to understand what my data was telling me. I
Mhm.
just thought like I had it and that was enough. Um, Data is critical to any growth plan that you have because now every decision you make, like everything you say yes to moving forward, you're going to have to say no to something else. And I think what data allows you to do is make better decisions. But let's like think about the whole ecosystem, right? Like waste as a vertical is many sub verticals. So you have residential workflows, you have commercial workflows, you have construction workflows, medical, hazardous. There's so many workflows. They're all regulated differently to some extent. Your market is going to regulate everything differently to some extent. And there's also this kind of like, cost centers of dumping is higher in one place than another place. The infrastructure is different in this place versus that place. And if you have big growth plans, like you need to really understand the unit economics of like what is happening. Whether you're small or large, I don't care how big or small you are, you need to understand it because it's such a big capital intensive industry. Like every truck is 300,000 plus. Every dumpster you buy or any asset you buy is a few $1,000s. Penalties from regulators are expensive. Like money really matters. And so data is going to allow you to make a better proactive decision as opposed to a reactive decision. And I think that's critical. Now, aggregating data then becomes the problem, right? Like, how do I aggregate it in a way that makes sense? Because bad data just leads to bad analysis. And so you really need to know that, like, whatever partner you're working with or however you're aggregating this data is being done thoughtfully. It's structured thoughtfully. That's probably the number one question I would tell any company that's thinking about software to ask. Like, how are you thinking about my data? How are you thinking about leveraging it? How are you going to make it so that I can utilize it appropriately? It's so important. And then it also lets you pick up on trends. Like you could see like what your community is doing, right? Like is there a big construction boom? So should I be proactively buying more dumpsters or a roll-off truck? Or should are these residential contracts coming up and I need to bid those appropriately? Like what is the waste ecosystem looking like? What kind of outlets do I have? How are my dumping costs working? Like it's going to help you in so many areas. So I'm a big proponent of it. I'm a big, as you can tell, the passion I have for it. Like I think it's really important, and I think it also allows us. Once you do that effectively, then you can actually utilize the industry and make it as such that it's measurable. And then once it becomes measurable, it becomes less regulatory because now it's like I understand where the streams are going. I understand what's happening. I understand how to make like meaningful change from a sustainability ESG perspective. Like it leads, like waste haulers are the data center. They really are. And if they leverage that appropriately, they can obviously like create more powerful outcomes for a national or global kind of effort.
Yeah. And I think it's important for small haulers to kind of understand their data too, because we're talking an industry where like the margins can be so thin in areas, a little bit here or there can cost you thousands of dollars. And that becomes essential when you're thinking about like your business plan. So having that good data or having data to kind of back up what you're doing, it becomes essential to your operation.
It can put you out of business, man. Like you can make one decision that can put you out of business. Like I think it's important across the board. Like I just
Mhm.
really gotta be mindful of the data, but also understand how important how valuable it is. Like it's valuable for any waste hauler to understand their data. Like if they're going to be an acquisition target at some point, and that's the outcome they want, like having a good data set is going to make it more likely that you're acquired. So these things really do matter in outcomes.
Yeah. So hey, lesson for everybody at home, because I know everyone in the industry is listening. Good advice, good, bit of news there for you. All right. So speaking of news, I want to kind of jump into what's going on at CurbWaste now. The Series B funding or Series B that you're entering. Give us a sense of like what that means for the company's growth.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, man. I mean, I think the main thing that's happened for us is like we've kind of always led with an idea of like serving the customer and serving the industry. Like that's been the most
Mhm.
important from the jump. And every step we've taken, I kind of took my own advice and just decided like what kind of outcomes are we expecting? And I think right now what we're trying to become is a system of record of the waste industry, like to be, the Salesforce of the waste industry, to be the service titan of the waste industry, that type of outcome. And the value that those companies bring to those markets. So, obviously, in order to do that, we needed to build a lot of product and we needed to have the ability to invest in our customer base. So if our customers, we wouldn't be here without our customers, like full stop. Like
Right.
I know this industry, but I don't pretend or sit here and tell you that I know everything. Like I know maybe how New York works, but I don't know, I didn't know how a lot of these markets work until the customers informed us and partnered with us and told us. So we wouldn't be here without them. And I think our customer base has done an amazing job of like identifying pain and saying like, hey, I wish that you could solve this. So what cash allows you to do is obviously invest in the right people and invest in the right areas from a product perspective. So the Series B is just a continuation of that. It is we raised $28 million from Social Ventures, which is Cox Enterprises, a strategic investor, pretty deep in many different kind of segments and market segments, and bring a unique kind of perspective to the industry. They aligned with our visions and goals of like trying to be that system of record and bringing meaningful value to the waste industry in a way that we understand that it's not grow at all costs, right? It's making sure you spend the time to solve the problem in the right way and provide meaning and provide value to the waste hauler. So this is going to help us do that.
Yeah, that very exciting. Congratulations again. Now we're looking at how this can accelerate product development or expand your reach with haulers across the country.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah, across the
Yeah,
country.
that is awesome. So many new features, or are there any new features in technology that maybe you're looking at the next phase of your growth, or that you want to focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, we're going to continue to focus on workflows. We think about the software from a perspective of like which workflows are kind of critical to the waste company. So like, I'm a roll-off company, I'm a commercial routing company, I'm a residential company. Do I have transfer stations? How do I vertically integrate those, or MRFs, or landfills or whatever? So we obviously focus on those key areas and building products that can help them process and do their workflows. But I think the big things that are really exciting for us right now are first and foremost is data. We're rolling out a business intelligence tool that's AI powered that's going to allow them to see their data in ways that they never saw it before, and also manipulate it in ways that are critical to what they need. So I guess a key like example of this would be, you're servicing residentially a municipal contract that requires you to report back in a certain format, or you're doing a leads job and you have to submit that through a leads format. This tool is going to allow you to kind of manipulate your data in a way that can be presented in the way of which each stakeholder wants to see it. It can also drill down by persona. So like a dispatcher can see a certain group of widgets or segments that they need to see that's relevant to them, whereas an owner or a private equity firm can see it in an admin level, holistic level throughout all their different portfolios. So that's definitely, a super exciting area that we're investing in. And I think that the second thing is AI tooling. As we think about AI and as we think about kind of how it's going to make an impact for the waste haulers, we're going to be investing in like these repetitive tasks that these companies still have to do and continue to have to do on a day-to-day or weekly or monthly basis, and try to help them automate that process or give them better visibility into that process to kind of expedite the timelines of which those processes and workflows are getting executed. So those are the two major areas where a lot of our funding is going to be going. And obviously, like our customer base has been driven with that and helping us think about those different tasks and different obligations.
Now, Michael, you're a person who's very well versed in the industry. From this conversation alone, I've learned. How do you go about communicating the value of technology to investors who might not know the industry as well as you? And also, what kind of advice can you give to maybe the smaller haulers who are trying to have these conversations?
Yeah, so I think the way we talk to investors is, for me, it's all about the vision, right?
Mhm.
I need to be able to articulate, okay, here's where we are today, and every stage of when we did pre-seed money, when we did like our first amount of money, everything was like a concept and an idea, we always talked about like where we want to end up. Like it was very clear about the steps we were going to take and what the money was going to allow us to do in order to achieve that grand vision. So if that vision is super clear and super dialed in, and you're convicted in that, like the true conviction, an investor, it's going to pique an investor's interest because they're going to see like, are you uniquely positioned to be the person to solve that problem, or is your company uniquely positioned to solve that problem? So that's the first thing. I always think that the story and the vision is really, really important. And I would say that for any small hauler, like that has to be very clear. The second thing is like you kind of have to understand that like these companies, our company goes through evolutions, right? It's like, okay, we want to focus on this thing and we want to make sure that we're doing that thing really well. And you don't want to it's hard because you have a lot of waste companies telling you they need a lot of different things. But you have to be very kind of product led as opposed to growth led in certain cases because again like if you get pulled in many directions you're going to end up building something that's like meeting only a percentage of the need but not doing it well and then it becomes very challenging for your customer base because then they have to figure out ways to get around that. So we try to stay very dialed in. As you invest your money it's all about people, right? Like this company does not succeed unless I bring in the best possible people that have the same values, that have the same level of effort, that really are convicted in this industry and want to solve the problem. And so you're only as good as your people. Like, I think about it from a team perspective. Like I played team sports my whole life, and it was, a collection of individual efforts for a singular goal. So everybody's got to be contributing to those efforts in a meaningful way and in a passionate way. So that's kind of how I think about it. And then from the investor's perspective, like if I were looking at a vertical SaaS company like ours, like specific to a vertical, like again, like the waste industry is an absolutely critical area of our society. It's like it's a core part of what we do, both on a national and global level. Like it is incredibly important. It's a very difficult challenge. It's a very hard problem to solve. So I think anybody that's trying to get in and do something interesting in a space that's very challenging, I think is exciting for an investor. And I think it's also, again, like, are they uniquely positioned to go out and do it?
Cool. Yeah, you mentioned before we'll get a little off topic here. You mentioned team sports your whole life. What's your sport of choice?
I was a baseball player. I played baseball my whole life. Yeah, it was
Okay.
that was my first dream, I think. So that was a big part of what I
So
did.
are you pulling for the Mariners then to beat Toronto? I imagine a New York guy.
I gotta be honest, I would love it's actually an interesting series because like for me, it's like both of these teams. I'm a Mets fan, so I've struggled
Okay.
my whole life, and I understand that I've never seen a World Series. I guess I would be pulling for the Mariners, I guess if I had to like draw a line, but honestly, I would be excited for either of those teams to win a World Series, quite honestly. I think it'd be really exciting for the fan base. And it's good to see an underdog, so I love that.
Yeah, I'm pulling for the Mariners or the Brewers at the moment. I'm an Orioles fan, so like my whole life has just been despair, and then like, oh, small promises, total
Yeah.
disaster. So
Yeah. I
that's where
mean,
I'm at.
that's our second team. My wife is from Maryland, so that's our second team. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm in Northern Virginia, so like I got the Maryland sports locked down, and this year has been horrific. So I'm not having a good time.
Not great. Not great.
All right. All right. Before let's jumping back into it, before I let you go, I always ask everyone kind of a looking ahead assessment. So we're looking 12 to 24 months. We talked about a little future with the Series B stuff, the kind of things you're focused on there. But where do you see CurbWaste fitting into in the evolution that we're seeing in the waste industry?
Yeah. Look, I think my main goal, like I said at the beginning, is like, are we building the right solutions for the customer base? Like that's really, we're hyper focused on the customer. I'm hyper focused on their needs, and I'm hyper focused on bringing something to this industry that really matters, that moves the needle. So I think like whether it's 12 months, 24 months, 48 months, 10 years, I just never want to lose sight of what the objective is. And the objective is to build something, a system or a process that helps the waste industry move forward. I think I think if I had to pick a goal for me, like I would love for us to work with waste haulers that have those growth visions and have a similar vision of like this kind of like ascension of this industry and bringing it to building a community of people that really want to improve the space. I would love to partner with a company that's going to be the next, Waste Management or GFL or Republic. I mean, I would love to be the system of record that helps them get there and be a partner in that journey. But I also would love to watch a company go from 2 trucks to 10 trucks, right? Like that is the number one metric to me. Like, did this company grow with us? Did we help them grow? Are we a part of their story? Not the reason of their story, but like, are we a part of it? I think on a bigger picture, like we want to build the integratable solution to the waste industry. I want this platform to pull not only from what they're doing operationally day to day, but Are we pulling in data from their payroll providers so that we can give them better, profitability metrics? Are we pulling in their GPS providers? Are we pulling in their whatever they're doing, maintenance, whatever they're doing in their ecosystem? I want it to be centralized and I want it to be seamless. I just want it to be as efficient as humanly possible for these waste companies. We have a long way to go. There's a lot to do. This industry has nothing short of problems and pain, like we said. So there's a lot of things we have to solve for. But I want to build a community and I want to build something that people in this industry are proud of. And that's what I really just hoping my legacy can be. I really want this to be just like, he moved the needle forward. That's really all I want CurbWaste to do.
Well, yeah, I second to that. That's awesome. So if anyone wants to learn more about CurbWaste, where can they go?
You can go CurbWaste.com. You can reach out to anybody in our team at any given time. We try to talk to everybody. So I'm always willing to learn, always willing to hear, always willing to listen. We're grateful to be in this space, and I'm very passionate about it. I think you can tell. So I care about this a lot. But yeah, check out CurbWaste.com and check out what we can do.
Well, cool, Michael. Congratulations again on the Series B. I'm looking forward to see more news and stuff come out of CurbWaste. I thank you for joining me on the Waste World podcast. This was fun. I had a good time today.
No, thanks so much for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, and everyone at home, of course, CurbWaste.com, and then Michael we'll be watching CurbWaste with seeing what's going on out there. We're excited.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
All right, that wraps up this episode of the Waste World podcast. A big thank you again to Michael Marmo for joining the show and sharing his insights on how AI and technology are reshaping the waste industry. Look, not just for the big players, but for every hauler looking to stay competitive and efficient. And if that's you, maybe you should reach out to Michael. Maybe someone like CurbWaste is there to help. I don't know what you need. You do. You know better than anybody. Make some phone calls. Get on the line. Say what's up. So, hey, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review the Waste World podcast wherever you are listening to it. It helps us put the show in front of more people. It helps bring on cooler guests like Michael and the rest of the guests we've had so far on the podcast. I feel like we've had a really good group of professionals and industry innovators and people who are doing cool things. And I want that to continue. So please, again, subscribe, rate, and or review the Waste World podcast. And you can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on, a handful of other podcasting services. Probably all of them. I haven't looked at all of them, but there's a lot. I'm sure you can see us all there. If you're interested in reading up on what's going on in the industry or looking for past episodes and more from the industry, make sure you check out waste360.com. A lot of good stuff going on there. A lot of stuff that's in written form, so you don't have to hear this voice go at you for a while. And look at this rotating recycling logo as I try to put my life back together after a move and being gone for a couple weeks. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Let me start that again. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. But don't forget, it's our world. Let's not waste it.